When people watch television, they often see only the polished version of reality. The producers choose which parts to keep, which moments to highlight, and which details to leave out. This is true for most shows, but with The Repair Shop, there has always been something more. The show looks simple on the surface. People bring in old, broken items, and a team of experts carefully restore them. Yet, beyond the sanding, stitching, and polishing, there is a quieter story happening. Viewers notice the way the experts treat each item with respect. They see the way memories are handled with care. And for many, what stands out the most is not just the repaired objects, but the people doing the repairs. Among them, two names shine brightly: Jay Blades and Suzie Fletcher. Their presence together has touched audiences in a way that feels rare in today's world of fast-paced and noisy television. From the very beginning, viewers could sense something special. They saw the way Jay encouraged people with his warm words and laughter. They noticed the calm strength in Suzie's silence, and the careful way her hands worked on every detail. Even without knowing their full personal stories, audiences could feel that both carried experiences of loss, struggle, and resilience. It was as if every smile, every stitch, and every supportive glance carried a deeper meaning. This connection between them soon became one of the beating hearts of the show, and people across the world began to write letters, sharing how The Repair Shop had become more than a TV program. For them, it became a safe space, a weekly reminder that brokenness, whether in objects or in life, can be mended. What makes the story of Jay and Suzie so moving is that neither of them planned to become public figures or emotional symbols. They were not chasing fame or trying to build an image for the cameras. Instead, they were simply doing their work. Jay was restoring furniture, Suzie was working with saddles and leather, and together they were showing up day after day to do what they loved. Yet within that ordinary rhythm, something extraordinary took place. Their friendship deepened, not loudly, but quietly. Crew members spoke of how the barn often felt like a family, not because of contracts or obligations, but because of genuine care. They noticed how Suzie, once unsure about being on television, slowly began to smile more freely. They saw how Jay, who had carried heavy struggles from his past, seemed lighter in the company of his colleagues. For viewers, these changes were subtle, but they were felt. The Repair Shop became a sanctuary not only for the objects and their owners, but also for the people working inside the barn. The bond between Jay and Suzie became part of that sanctuary. It showed that healing is not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it is simply about being present, about standing side by side, and about offering trust without needing to explain it. Their connection gave viewers hope. If Jay and Suzie could find strength after grief and hardship, then perhaps anyone could. This unspoken message is part of why the show has built such a loyal following. People are not only watching objects being repaired, they are also witnessing human lives being slowly, quietly restored. When people watch television, they often only see the surface of things. They see polished edits, chosen shots, and conversations that fit neatly into a time slot. What they do not always see are the real people behind those moments. The Repair Shop is different in many ways. On the surface, it is a program about fixing broken items. A chair with cracked legs, a clock that no longer ticks, or a worn-out teddy bear. Each is carefully repaired by skilled experts. But beneath those repairs lies something more meaningful. The show became a place where not only objects found new life, but people did too. And at the center of that quiet transformation are two people: Jay Blades and Suzie Fletcher. From the very first episodes, viewers could sense their bond. Jay's laughter and warmth balanced Suzie's calm strength. Audiences noticed how Suzie's steady hands worked with care, as though she was stitching together pieces of her own story. They noticed how Jay brought reassurance, not just to guests, but to his fellow craftspeople. Even before fans knew the details of their struggles, they could feel that both Jay and Suzie had walked through pain and found resilience. Letters began pouring in from viewers. People shared how the barn gave them a sense of peace, reminding them that brokenness, whether in objects or in life, could be repaired. For many, the show became a kind of therapy, and in the middle of it all, the friendship between Jay and Suzie quietly grew, showing that healing is not always loud. Sometimes it is as simple as two people showing up, side by side, with patience and care. What makes Jay and Suzie's story so powerful is its simplicity. They never set out to become symbols of resilience or healing. They were not trying to capture attention or chase fame. They were just doing their jobs, restoring objects, using their skills, and showing respect for people's memories. Yet, within that steady rhythm, their bond began to form. Behind the scenes, crew members often described how the barn felt like a family. It wasn't a family born out of contracts or forced roles, but one built on genuine care. They saw how Suzie, who at first felt nervous about being on camera, slowly grew more comfortable. They noticed how Jay, who had once carried heavy struggles in silence, became lighter when surrounded by people who accepted him as he was. This dynamic did not need words. The trust between them was visible in the way they worked together. The repair shop became more than just a set. It was a sanctuary. It stood for the idea that restoration isn't only about furniture, clocks, or saddles. It's about people. This is why the show felt so different from the reality TV programs filled with arguments or drama. Where other shows celebrated noise and conflict, the repair shop quietly celebrated kindness. And at the center of that kindness was the bond between Jay and Suzie. Their presence reminded people that life does not have to be dramatic to be meaningful. Healing can happen slowly, softly, and with patience. If Jay and Suzie could rebuild their strength after loss, so could anyone. Viewers saw hope in their presence, and that hope became a reason to return to the barn each week. Healing beyond objects as the seasons passed. It became clear that the friendship between Jay and Suzie was one of the strongest threads in the show's story. It represented endurance and quiet trust. Audiences grew protective of it, celebrating each moment they shared on screen. There was never a need for labels or explanations. It was enough to see them working side by side, supporting each other without fanfare. The barn itself became more than a workplace. It became a metaphor for life. Just as a broken chair or saddle could be restored, so too could people find healing after loss. Each crack told a story, and each repair honored that story rather than erasing it. This message touched audiences deeply. In a fast-moving world where television often rewards spectacle, the repair shop stood as proof that gentleness could be powerful. The bond between Jay and Suzie underscored that point. Together, they showed that the most moving stories are not always loud. Sometimes they are quiet, patient, and deeply human. Viewers were reminded that scars do not mean failure. They are signs of survival. They are reminders that life can break us, but it can also be rebuilt. This is why people did not just watch the show for the repairs. They watched because it gave them hope. Hope that no matter what they were going through, healing was possible. Suzie Fletcher's story within the barn is especially powerful. When she returned to the UK in 2016, it was not simply a change of address. It was a decision to begin again after devastating loss. She had lived in the United States, where she had been married. But when her husband passed away, her world fell apart. The grief silenced her, making her more introverted, less confident, and uncertain about her place in the world. By the time she came back to England, she was looking for stability. She was not searching for fame or television appearances. She wanted to return to the one thing that had always made sense: her craft. Through her brother Steve, already part of the repair shop, Suzie found her way into the barn. At first, she was hesitant. The thought of being on camera made her uneasy. But as time passed, she realized that the show was not about performance. It was about dignity. It was about restoring objects with care and honoring the stories tied to them. Slowly, she began to feel at home again. Each saddle she stitched, each piece of leather she repaired, was not only a job but also part of her healing. Through this steady rhythm, she rediscovered confidence. And in that barn, among all her colleagues, she found in Jay Blades someone who understood what it meant to carry invisible wounds. He never tried to fix her grief. Instead, he gave her space. And in that quiet support, Suzie found strength again. Jay Blades' journey to the repair shop was equally transformative. His life before the show was marked by hardship. Born in Hackney, London, he faced challenges from an early age that left lasting scars. He grew up in a tough environment where survival often mattered more than dreams. Later, he experienced homelessness, sleeping rough, and struggling to find steady work. His battles with mental health were heavy, and there were times when the idea of building a future felt impossible. Yet throughout these struggles, one thread held him steady: craft. Working with his hands, repairing wood, sanding surfaces, restoring furniture, gave him a sense of control. Each time he fixed an object, it felt like a small step toward fixing himself. But finding a place where those skills were valued was not easy. For years, he drifted, unsure where he belonged. When the repair shop came into his life, it was as though the scattered pieces of his journey finally had a place to fit. The barn gave him more than a job. It gave him community, stability, and purpose. In that environment, surrounded by colleagues who respected his skills, Jay began to thrive. And when Suzie walked into that same space, carrying her own pain and looking for a new beginning, neither of them could have predicted how their paths would quietly intertwine. The connection between Jay and Suzie was never about romance or spectacle. It was about balance. Jay, with his open laughter and natural warmth, brought energy into the barn. Suzie, with her quiet steadiness, brought calm. Together, they created harmony. Where Jay was expressive, Suzie was thoughtful. Where Jay offered encouragement, Suzie offered stability. This balance was not loud, but it was deeply felt. Crew members noticed it. Viewers sensed it, even if they could not put it into words. Their bond grew not from dramatic gestures, but from working side by side in the ordinary rhythm of repairs. Jay did not push Suzie into the spotlight. He gave her space to find her own voice again. For someone still carrying grief, that patience was priceless. In return, Suzie gave Jay something equally important: grounding. For a man who had once felt adrift, her quiet presence reminded him of stability. This mutual exchange of support became one of the invisible engines of the repair shop. While the cameras captured objects being restored, something less visible but even more meaningful was happening. Two people, both once broken, were learning to find strength together. Over time, it became clear that the repair shop was never only about antiques. It was about people. Each broken object mirrored the brokenness carried silently by its owner, and often by the restorers themselves. By repairing objects, they also reminded viewers that no life is beyond repair. This is why the show touched people so deeply. It wasn't about spectacle or competition. It was about care. Care for objects, yes, but also care for the people who brought them in, and for the team who restored them. Jay and Suzie's bond embodied this truth. It showed that healing can happen quietly, without big announcements, without labels. It can happen in the simple act of showing up, of working together, of trusting someone else with your presence. Their friendship is now part of the show's legacy. It tells people that restoration is not only possible for furniture and heirlooms, it is possible for lives too. When people watch television, they often see only the polished version of reality. The producers choose which parts to keep, which moments to highlight, and which details to leave out. This is true for most shows, but with the repair shop, there has always been something more. The show looks simple on the surface. People bring in old, broken items, and a team of experts carefully restore them. Yet, beyond the sanding, stitching, and polishing, there is a quieter story happening. Viewers notice the way the experts treat each item with respect. They see the way memories are handled with care. And for many, what stands out the most is not just the repaired objects, but the people doing the repairs. Among them, two names shine brightly: Jay Blades and Suzie Fletcher. Their presence together has touched audiences in a way that feels rare in today's world of fast-paced and noisy television. From the very beginning, viewers could sense something special. They saw the way Jay encouraged people with his warm words and laughter. They noticed the calm strength in Suzie's silence, and the careful way her hands worked on every detail. Even without knowing their full personal stories, audiences could feel that both carried experiences of loss, struggle, and resilience. It was as if every smile, every stitch, and every supportive glance carried a deeper meaning. This connection between them soon became one of the beating hearts of the show, and people across the world began to write letters, sharing how the repair shop had become more than a TV program. For them, it became a safe space, a weekly reminder that